Hello and welcome back to the Skyrim audio adventure. I've had many difficult production cycles, but this one probably takes the cake. I had a very hard time writing this chapter. There was an abundance of work at my job that was keeping me away from the project. At one point, my computer broke. Several delays in casting and other issues. I had to say goodbye and help my grandfather through the end of his life and lay him to rest. And now here at the tail end of this, I've also fallen ill. So really, I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to be getting this episode out. And if you are here, still looking forward to these episodes, still supporting the project, then I thank you, genuinely. And so, without further ado, let's get into Chapter 10 of Book 2 of the Skyrim audio adventure, The Stranger. Kyea was a busy woman. The tutelage of High Priestess Danica Purespring had served her well in her 4 years as an acolyte and healer. One day she hoped to travel to the College of Winterhold to study under the true trailblazers of the Restoration School, like Colette Merens, or perhaps reach out to the more unorthodox visionaries like Yakut Tawashi, author of the lovely novel Withershins. However, it was weeks like this that not only challenged her skill as a healer, but also made her question her fitness for the pursuit. Being called out to the far eastern border to tend to wounded soldiers was one thing. Finding their minds ravaged and broken was another. Helping to ferry them back to Whiterun was one thing. Finding them housing and care once the temple's beds had been filled was another. Lending a hand in a woodsman's fight with a strange and violent affliction, applying wild and desperate remedies unsure of their effect, holding him together as he passed through the 7 gates of death was one thing. Housing him in the temple, unsure of what she was housing, was another. But Kyea was a busy woman. The woodsman had not woken for a full day and a half now, and she had others in her care. 3 broken legs, 2 dislocated arms, 4 broken jaws, countless broken noses, cracked fingers, and sliced tendons, all coupled with absolutely no cooperation from her patients. Arcane healing could work wonders, sure, but it was rare that anything was ever made just as it was before. There were scars, seen and unseen. Not as many as a healing potion might leave, but unnatural healing will almost always incur unnatural results. Or, at the very least, imperfect ones. Time was the only true healer of wounds seen and unseen. But how was she supposed to explain physical therapy and strengthening exercises and prescribed rest to soldiers incapable of pronouncing their own names? How? She pondered this as she made her rounds, using her magic when she had the strength, helping the loved ones assist their kin, clothing, feeding, and generally shepherding what was once Whiterun's finest. Then, though she was surprised any outside noise could reach her, a sharp rapping at the door drew her attention. A man was there, a flat-jawed Nord under a short mop of brown hair. He was carrying a curious, raggedy bag. By his vaguely presentory clothes caked with dirt and sweat, she knew him to be a courier. She gave up trying to wrestle an empty bowl away from a soldier who refused to understand that she hadn't filled the bowl with porridge yet, and hustled over.
Yes?
She asked.
Can I help you?
I've got this bundle. I was told to give it to a stranger here, whatever that means. Kyea perked up at the unusual but, by now, familiar name, and extended a hand.
I'll take it. I know where he is.
Oh, all right then. That's all. The courier dropped the bag at her feet and left with a bow. The priestess bent to pick it up and immediately groaned at the unexpected weight of the thing. Upon inspection, she found the bundle to be more of a rucksack or backpack. By the color and texture, she guessed that it had been made out of some large hairy animal, like a wolf or a bear. Something that caught her eye was the clasp holding it shut. It was a long, sharp tooth run through a loop of braided flax and turned sideways so it would catch. She seemed to recall during those desperate hours a couple days ago that the man called Stranger wore a necklace adorned with similar teeth. Perhaps this was simply the way of hunters and woodsmen like him. Of course, now he was wearing the garb of the Delivered, Kinnereth's grateful children, and his necklace, with the rest of his weapons and gear, were stashed in his room. The pack moved oddly in her grasp, dipping and sagging unevenly, as though its contents hadn't been organized in some time.
I'm sure it all makes sense to him,
she thought aloud as she turned and made for his room. Through the noise and well-meaning chaos, she dipped and dodged with that grace that only healers and chefs seem to master, till she came at last to his door. She opened it. She didn't knock. Perhaps she should have. There, on the soft bed of cloth and hay pillows, there was no woodsman lying in supine slumber. There was only the garb of the Delivered, folded neatly by the rumpled sheet in a pool of hazy morning light. Her heart skipped a beat. This was what she got for stretching herself so thin. She should have been here, or rather, someone should have been here, perhaps not her. She was a busy woman, and honestly hadn't had time to consider what steps to take if the man woke up. Still, she figured, he was gone, so it wasn't her problem anymore. When Danica found out, then it would most definitely be her problem. But for now, she was off the hook. Then she saw the hand. It was definitely a hand. Kyea knew what they looked like. It flitted briefly through the pool of light. Then again, it swiped through. It was a scarred hand, dark, calloused, and missing the pointer finger. Of course, where there is a hand, there must be an arm, and where there is an arm, there must be a body. The priestess's eyes adjusted, and all at once she saw the man's figure, standing in the shadow by the incoming shaft of light. He reached for it, snatching at the beam as though he might take the rays in his grasp. When he failed, he let his hand bathe in the morning glow, before pawing at it again. Kyea was a busy woman, but in spite of her ever-expanding task list, she wasn't in a rush to move, or breathe, or announce herself in any way. In spite of this, after several moments, the hunter seemed to take notice of her, and turned his head. That's when it happened. In that briefest of moments, as the odd man moved his gaze to match hers, there was a flash, a flicker of broad, pale blue in those shaded eyes, like a beast stalking the perimeter of a camp. Kyea was a busy woman. Tired, increasingly impatient, she had no time for idle speculations nor flights of fancy. So now, she didn't bother. She didn't waste anyone's time. She fainted dead on the spot. Bracknell slept like the dead. Not even the bumpy ride back to Whiterun could wake him. Faces came to him in his dreams. Rorik, the point of the spear, stabbed through the bladder, turning white as excrement and blood spilled from him in equal measure. Maldi, the Redgaurd scout, her chocolate skin going purple around the eyes as she succumbed to the poison from an Altmari arrow. Aelerine, or what had once been Aelerine, laying in a twisted heap atop the dead-eyed girl. Few moments in his life compared to what he'd just been through. Stranger's fight with Sanguinare Vampirus, took both of them on a tour of the veil between life and death. It would be easier to name the colors the half-breed had not turned: flushed red, ghostly white, yellows, greens, purples, and at one horrible moment, a stony gray, skin crackling and flaking off as though he were burning in lightless fire. Had it not been for the help of the priestesses, Stranger would have never held together long enough for Bracknell's interference to take effect. And interference was the correct word. At first it had been anything known to cure diseases, then he switched to poison blockers, then anything that vaguely boosted immunity. By the end there were prayers and garlic and all manner of comical measures. It hardly felt like they cured anything, more like they simply got in the way of the malicious malignancy. So he slept, and slept, and ate, and slept. Jorvaskr was silent, then roaring, then humming as the overflow from the halls of healing spilled inside. Tilma and Brill were doing their best for them, not Bracknell. He was spent. He was still sleeping, sprawled over a lounger, half in his day clothes, half in his night, when the doors of Jorvaskr slammed open. The old hunter snorted and jolted awake. The heavy footfalls of the twins were distinctive enough, but their shadows were a dead giveaway. Farkus, tall and terrible, Vilkus, short and sharp. Of course, Vilkus wasn't short at all. He had several inches on Bracknell, for that matter. It's just that Farkus had to duck to step inside.
"Codlack?"
called Vilkus. In the face, he was not dissimilar to Farkus. Being brothers, this was to be expected. The difference came when you looked into their eyes. Farkus's were hard. Vilkus's were keen.
"What madness is this?"
He gasped as he took in the carpet of wounded soldiers. Bracknell sat up groggily, raising his hand, his back protesting despite his conservative motions.
"Here,"
he croaked.
"I was wondering when you'd come by."
"Bracknell,"
Vilkus acknowledged.
what is all this? Did we find the carriage?
It was about then that Shield Maiden and Jada Stonearm and the heavily bearded Torvar shuffled in behind the twins. Bracknell wiped his eyes and gestured for the group to sit at a relatively uncrowded corner table.
"This may take a moment."
The eyes of the iron-blooded brothers grew wide at the tale of Codlack rallying Jorvaskr and riding to Aella's aid. Their brows furrowed at the grim news of the Valtheim Towers. They scratched their heads at the overcrowding at the Temple of Kinnereth.
"So Codlack and Skjor are still holding Valtheim. Aella and Ono are off hunting down the next lead. I take it you two were unsuccessful?"
Vilkus shook his head.
Nothing from the hovels around Pale Watch. No movement from the Stormcloaks to the north either. The border is quiet.
So is Greymore.
Farkus grumbled.
I didn't catch any trace of the girl.
Bracknell could tell he just barely stopped himself from saying whiff. A patron of the shadows he was not.
However, I did hear some news. A young couple has gone missing out in Rorikstead. I don't know if it's related, but word is the locals are spooked.
"That can't be good,
Bracknell stroked his chin.
unless they eloped."
At this time,
Vilkus mused.
when the roads are so treacherous.
"We can hope."
Well, you're free to hope, old man.
Vilkus stood stretching.
But what are we to do?
We're free to eat.
Farkus shuffled off with the other two. Vilkus lingered, watching them.
I suppose if Aella set out on this other lead, she's got some plan for getting in touch with us. Surely she doesn't expect us to simply wait.
"What will you do if she does?"
Codlack would want me to stay patient. Skjor would want me to check the missive board.
Where's Maddock?
"No idea. Maybe down at the temple talking to Heimskar."
He would be on my case to help the wounded.
"You're welcome to it. I'm sure Sildin could use the help."
The pair glanced over to the sheep-headed man darting between the disoriented guards. Vilkus stroked his chin.
Personally, I've half a mind to head out to Rorikstead. Aid in the search for the missing couple.
"So what will you do?"
The black-haired Nord thought a moment.
I suppose I could do with a meal.
"You'll need to be quick. Jorvaskr has many mouths at the moment."
I'm plenty quick. And nimble enough to lend a hand here.
How can I solve anything if I ignore what's before me?
Wisdom to my ears. Bracknell nodded and stood. I suppose I'd better get on my feet before they forget me.
He made for the door. Stranger would still be in the halls of healing, and if his old bones could stand it, he might as well check on him. On the northwest side of the Wind District, just before the shingles and fine wood filigree spilled out into the ramshackle huts of the plains, there lay the halls of the dead, where the people of Whiterun found their final rest among friends, forebearers, and the whispers of their kin. Like all such halls in Skyrim, this one was presided over by the priests of Arcadia. Andurs had committed his life to the god of the Vale, and now in his grey years found the Whiterun Hall firmly in his care. For shame. The whispers in the night sung terror into people's dreams, and the shadow of fear and doubt grew long. Perhaps it was something in the air, like leaves rattling on the wind, or water collecting on grass. There was something in the air, something that made the dead restless. Curling like fiddle necks in the frost, they had risen, and now they wandered his halls, confused and vengeful. He was helpless to stop them, unable even to parley with them without his amulet of Arcadia. His divine focus had been lost in those deep, rattling halls during the sudden awakening the previous night. It had all been so fast, he could do little more than shepherd the other priests to safety, narrowly escaping bony, clawing hands. Now, Gore was fixing them a meal in the kitchens. The work was slow from his shaking hands. Curwe was resting in their quarters. Fryn was sitting with him, staring nervously at the door, as if waiting for the next disaster. He rested a hand on his back. They had sent for the guards earlier, but apparently there had been some incident, and they were all far too busy. So, here they waited, in the entrance hall, the door to the inner tombs, sealed from the outside. In times of upheaval, the commoners flocked to the temples in search of reassurance. However, the temples of Arcadia often remained unvisited by those untouched by grief. Why tempt fate? Why speak of death when death had not touched you? Of course, with the war, it seemed there was always someone in need of their last rites. While no battles had touched Skyrim's central hold, her sons and daughters were flung far afield, and many returned in sheets. The Greymane sons had run off nearly 7 months ago to join the rebellion, and word was that they had since gone missing. Still, it was better than that battle-born lad who pranced around in his imperial armor despite having never seen a moment of action. Perhaps if more people contemplated the realities of death, they would treat life with more care, treat it like Arcade's jewel. It was mid-morning. The light from the east had just lit up the stained glass in the roof, casting the mosaic image of Arcadia across the western wall of the temple. He gazed down in reds and greens, hazel eyes stoic as stone, wise beard, staff in hand, watching. It was difficult to live in a continuous state of emergency. After enough stillness, adrenaline inevitably turned to annoyance. It was at this precise junction that the door to the temple opened.
Greetings.
He began, standing.
I'm sorry, but the Hall of the Dead is closed for the time being. Of course, myself and the other priests are happy to assist you in any way we...
Andurs trailed off. The man who had walked in had not heeded a single word, nor, it seemed, did he heed their very presence. He was armed, but not in a way that stood out as impressive or noble. He wore a haphazard mix of brown cloth and leather. Everything about him seemed the color of earth. Even the exposed chainmail on his arms was dull, gleamless even under the rainbow lights of Arcadia. A creature freshly out of his burrow. with something distant in the eyes, something searching yet absent.
"Is this the place?"
he murmured, voice a low hum like he were speaking directly into someone's ear.
This is the Temple of Arcadia, my friend. Please have a seat. You must be weary.
The man's head turned slightly as he offered Andurs a brief, appraising glance, as if he'd been interrupted by a fool he hadn't the patience for. In that glance, something flickered. Andurs felt a chill run up his spine. He had to take a moment to puzzle whether the flicker had been a thing felt or a thing seen. The man murmured again.
"No, I feel it. Just through there."
Before the priest could move, the man was lifting the crossbar off of the tall doors and disappearing into the halls of the dead.
Wait!
Andurs cried as he and Fryn surged forward, but the doors were already closing, the bar laying useless on the stone. Andurs' old hands pulled at the door, but it was too heavy for him once it had already started swinging shut. No matter. With the aid of his apprentice, they'd soon be inside. However, when the head priest felt his feet skidding on the smooth stone, he looked and saw that Fryn had gone for the heavy wooden plank. He gaped at the boy, frantic.
"What are you doing? A man just went inside."
That was his mistake. We must get this door secure. Panic, cold and clear, set in. This was why Andurs often mused that he preferred the company of the dead to that of the living. Human weakness? Fear? They had a job to do here.
"Stand and help me, boy. Do you think the gods have use for cowards?"
But master, your amulet!
These halls belong to Arcadia, and I am Arcadia's servant. Amulet or no, I'm going in there to either save that man or wring his neck. Now stand with me or find someone who will.
Fryn hesitated, and in that silence the pair could hear something familiar. The rasping, chittering tumult of the dead roaming beyond the hall. That man, whoever he was, didn't have much time before he met them. Setting his jaw, the boy rose and took the door in hand. Howls of the restless beyond accompanied the wailing of old iron hinges. The hall of the dead sucked in a hollow breath, leaching the warmth from the pair. Andurs snatched a candelabra from the entrance hall and dove into the shadowy jaws of the earth. Stillness met him. Quiet. He waited, listening for the sound of the dead shuffling here and there. But there was nothing. Fryn poked his head in after lighting some candles of his own. What's going on? The high priest stepped further inside and jumped as something rattled at his feet. He lowered the lights and gasped. The dead lay all around, silent, sundered, and peaceful once more.
It seems our little crisis is at an end. The dead sleep once more.
Fryn turned a curious shade of green at the sight and quickly occupied himself lighting the torches and braziers. Light filled the catacombs, illuminating the arched ceilings and the branching halls that wound ever deeper. The walls were split by shelf-like slots the dead called their beds. They reached all the way up to the roof, filigree and runes snaking between them.
"Hello?"
Andurs called, his voice echoing in a manner that would have been very odd to the uninitiated.
That was very reckless of you. While I'm grateful for your help, when you step into the house of Arcadia, you should heed the words of the chosen priest.
There was no response. Only the breath of the halls, the settling of dust, and Fryn busying himself with the torches. After a moment, Andurs shook his head. The rascal was apparently a shy one, and had hidden somewhere deeper inside. He strode into the shade, nothing but the candelabra in hand, itself acting both as a light source and a walking stick. Down a flight of stairs and a left at the intersection, he found his way to his low office, a small room of stone where he prepared the dead for rest and managed the family records. There, left carelessly on his desk, was his amulet of Arcadia. Wordlessly, he donned it, feeling the security and the weight of the divine return to his shoulders. On a hunch, he glanced under the desk, but no raggedy man to be seen. Shaking his head, he stepped back into the wide halls and paused. Some feet away, a book lay on the ground. He shuffled over to it. The dead had been an untidy lot, it seemed. Picking it up, the old tome was gray and rotting, a proud black cover curling and faded with age. It was not unusual for the dead to be entombed with a handful of precious possessions that carried them through their mortal years. Most commonly, they were weapons or mementos. But for Brag of Bruma, father of Frila, mother of Umdi, father of Yisgram, father of Mvasar, father of Clover, it had been a book. The Children of the Sky, the book that brought him to Skyrim, curious about the Nordic power of the Thum. Skyrim, where he'd met his wife, fathered his children, and found his end. Andurs ran his fingers along the faded words on the spine. They meant little to him beyond denoting the tome's owner. He'd been all over these halls, on foot and up on ladders. He knew exactly where this book went. Trouble was, the halls of the dead were deepening things, their walls growing higher with each generation. Andurs felt the heft of the book and glanced up to one of the highest slots on the adjacent wall, where Brag of Bruma still slept. He spotted streaks in the dust-covered stone.
By Arcadia.
He breathed.
How did you get up there?
Arcadia flinched as one of her more ambitious concoctions hissed and fizzled out of use. With a pop and a burble, it reduced to a blackened pile of mush. She brushed sweat off her brow and sighed. After a moment of disappointment, curiosity got the better of her, and she dipped her finger into the mixture. It was an odd thing. It looked curded and congealed like burnt stew or long, rotten milk, but upon touching it, it was light, like the ash of spent charcoal. Flaked sand light enough to float on the faintest breath. Its smell hit her instantly. It was rancid, but that wasn't unusual for an alchemical experiment. She bore the foul stench like it was nothing. What would matter was its effect. It needed to be tested to divine its attributes, though that was rarely an exact science. Often the only way to know for sure what would happen was to try some for yourself. However, one would be surprised by how easily they might stumble upon poison, so she left the testing to her army of unwilling rats in the back. Based on the smell, she felt fairly confident she'd discovered a glorified diuretic. What she knew with absolute certainty was that she'd fallen short of her goal. Flight. Levitation. Once only the domain of birds and insects, then the jealous pride of mages, and finally, if accounts from Morrowind and Blackmarsh were to be believed, the lost frontier of alchemy. She had been obsessing over the pursuit when she wasn't entertaining thoughts of Farengar Secretfire, the court wizard, but without any guidance, it was seeming increasingly futile. The bell above the door rang as someone entered. This, however, was far from futile, tending to the myriad aches and pains, the ailments and illnesses of the people of Whiterun. She scribbled some notes in her alchemist's journal and slapped a lid on the concoction so it didn't get any ideas.
Welcome to Arcadia's Cauldron.
She turned, smiling.
Let me know if there's anything you need.
A man stood in the doorway. A curious man. His complexion seemed to be Nebonese, yet there was something Nordly in the slant of his brow. He wore a cheap shirt with sleeves bearing the tooth marks of time, but she could see strong chainmail peeking out from under it. He was armed. Varied and compact blades poked out from his frame like branches of a burnt tree. A bow and quiver rested on his back, the weapons of a man with much to prepare for and a long way to walk. What really brought the whole thing together was his skin. That which she could see was more scarred than any she had ever seen. Faded burns covered one side of his face and pulled his lips into an involuntary smirk. Even these were layered on top of a long vertical cut over his right eye. His forearms were riddled with punctures and tears, the sun-darkened skin turning pale and smooth like glacier stone around the raised flesh. However, what stood out the most to her alchemist eyes was a swath of stretched, rippled flesh that covered his throat. It looked angry, sporting dry, papery skin and dark red divots, like someone had dug their fingers into uncooked dough. The man stepped inside, letting the door shut behind him, and dropped a bulky, furred pack at his feet. Yeah, I was wondering if you had any juniper extract, crushed imp stool, maybe some skeever oil. Arcadia raised an eyebrow.
A man who knows what he wants. I don't suppose that makes you an alchemist, then?
I dabble, he said vaguely. I was actually wondering if you needed any help around the shop. I don't have much in the way of coin, you see. For gold, but I was hoping to keep some of that for food.
Oh.
Arcadia looked around. Surely her quest for flight would be lost on a drifting dabbler. And as for anything else?
While I appreciate the offer, I'm actually pretty well set up for the moment.
I could go foraging for you.
That's okay. You can...
Or I can just owe you. I loathe my debts. Ask anyone who knows me.
And who would that be?
Arcadia asked. At this, the man paused. He looked down and scuffed a boot. The alchemist laughed lightheartedly.
A philosopher, then? Does anyone truly know anyone?
I suppose. The man smiled, eyes still downcast. It occurred to her that he had not met her eyes once since he'd walked in. It was not unusual for newcomers to her shop to be quite taken with the peculiar decor, but their gaze always found hers eventually. This was deliberate. It was an odd effect, giving his unnerving presence the veneer of a shamed child.
As I was going to say, you can relax. Have a seat, please.
The adventurer did so, a touch sheepishly.
I've got imp stool for crushing,
she said, poking around her shelves.
I've got juniper ripe for extracting.
She dove into a well-sealed chest.
And I think I've got some skeever hide somewhere that we can sweat the oil out of.
Clutching tools and ingredients, she spun to him.
All I need to know is what you need all this for.
What about the gold?
We can worry about that in a moment. First, I need to know how I can help you.
I can do it myself.
Oh, I'm sure you could do fine.
Arcadia placed all the ingredients by her alchemy table and turned back to him, leaning on the edge.
But I'll do better.
The man sat quietly a moment. This seemed to be a trend with him. Then he extended his forearms, bringing the myriad of scars into the light of the room. I use them to treat my scars, help them fade quicker. I started this a while ago, make an infusion, soak my wraps, then wrap my arms. It's kind of a passive application. He drew his arms back, simultaneously withdrawing into himself. I fell into a river recently. Figured now was a good time to re-treat them. Arcadia raised her eyebrows at the story.
Show me the wraps.
The odd man dug into his pack, producing 2 long brown strips. The alchemist examined them closely.
What is this? Linen?
He gave a noncommittal sideways nod.
What, did you tear up a bedsheet?
Now came an equally noncommittal shrug. Arcadia shook her head at his continued vagueness, but his movements had drawn her eyes back to his neck. She took a deep breath. She didn't need to ask. No way. Ask? Yes, absolutely. Asking was exactly what she was going to do.
Okay.
She said finally.
I can take care of this for you. I have one quick favor to ask.
Sure, he said shortly.
Would you mind showing me your neck?
He blinked. Then he blushed. Then, slowly, he tilted his head up, giving his throat to the light. Arcadia knelt to get an even closer look at the wrinkled, gnarled scar tissue. Yep, there was no denying it. This was the work of a rapid healing potion, arcanely infused to cause rapid cellular activity. Flesh mending itself so fast, it barely had any idea where it was going. The divots made her wonder at the nature of the wound, but one question she didn't need answered. Only a handful of alchemists made these with any regularity, because only a handful of alchemists had regular correspondence with a court wizard. In Whiterun, There was only one,
Tell you what,
she said after a long silence.
give me the 4 gold. I'll take care of these wraps. And I've got some stew in the back. You can have as much as you want. One condition, though.
Being? He asked, chin still helpfully raised.
Let me do something for your neck as well.
There was a pale blue flash above, and it drew her eyes to his face. He, however, was staring determined at the ceiling.
Sounds good,
he croaked.
Good.
She said, and descended on her workbench.
Could I trouble you with a question?
No, I'm not married, but I've got some hopefuls, so you'll have to get in line.
Do you know a wizard? Arcadia stiffened.
What?
A mage, a shaman. I have need for someone of wisdom and unseen power. Not a priest, though.
Oh.
The alchemist relaxed.
Well, there is the court wizard up at the castle. I could put in a good word for you.
I'd rather not make the climb if I can avoid it.
What, you don't climb?
Not those steps.
Then
Arcadia paused to light the fire for sweating the hide.
go to the north side of the town. It's in the Plains district, but cutting through the Wind district is faster. There's a small hut on a rise out there. Ask after Mistress Mori.
She's a mage?
Well,
Arcadia idly pounded her pestle into the juniper berries.
she's a mystic.
Finally feeling well enough to venture, Bracknell made a beeline for the halls of healing at the Temple of Kinnereth. He was expecting bedlam, but not like this. The unwell were all around, guards he recognized from the towers with a few others sprinkled in. The place was radiating stress, the root making itself known by the gaggle of temple robes huddled over a fallen shape. Kyea was laid out on a reclining bench, the other healers tending to her, wetting her forehead, trying to wake her from some stupor. Bracknell's old soldier's instinct kicked in, and he grabbed a passing priest.
Oi, you! Which room is stranger in?
Oh, I don't know anyone here.
No, shithead, stranger is his name. 9 fingers, burned up face, broods too much. Looks dirty even when he's clean.
I don't know, stranger. We did have a patient go missing, though. Kyea was going to check on him, but now she's like this. The old hunter nodded and let the priest go. He shoveled his way through the temple, returning the greetings and grunts he got from the guards, scanning all the while for that ugly, half-burnt, half-breed face.
What are the odds?
He muttered as he went.
What are the bloody odds?
Winri ran like the wind through the tall grass, past cottage and stable, over fence and field, up to the small hut on the bluff. Curious ornaments and chimes rattled and rang as the day's breath set them dancing. Under the bright, fluttering fabric she went and dashed inside the front door. The door itself was actually quite flimsy, seeming largely superficial, but inside there was a heavy web of curtains and cloth. It stood as additional insulation while also lending the interior a pointedly theatric ambience. She skirted around to the left, dropped down, and rolled under the curtains, immediately embraced by the warmth of a homey hearth. She came to a stop as she rolled into a pair of familiar feet. Grinning a grin of pure childish mischief, she looked up into the eyes of her mother. The Breton woman smirked down at her under loose, raven curls.
Let me guess.
She began.
Practicing to be a wheel when you grow up?
Hide and seek!
Winri declared proudly.
Me, Lars, Mila, Braith, and Oleron are hiding. Sirica is it.
That's great. So, why are you here?
It's the last place they'd ever expect. They'll never come here on their own.
Her mother blinked.
Okay.
So I'll win.
Yes, but how will you know when to stop hiding?
This gave Winri pause.
When I win?
Who will tell you when you've won?
The girl's excitement was slowly ebbing away.
Well...
Her mother helped her to her feet.
You remember when you lost that comb I made you?
Winri hardly registered it.
So I should go back?
Yeah, but let me get to the moral here. Do you remember when you lost your comb?
Yes.
What did you do?
I looked for it.
And then?
I didn't find it.
And?
I found it after a long time.
Okay, yes, but before that...
I stopped looking.
Exactly. So the key is be difficult to find, but not impossible. Otherwise, the game is over before it starts.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Good. Now off with you.
The pair froze as a loud knock rattled the door.
Hide.
Her mother hissed immediately.
Like the game?
No, impossible this time.
There came another knock.
Go!
Winri dashed into the corner of the room and climbed squirrel-like into the rafters. She found herself lost for a moment within her own home. The rafters were warm with the rising heat of the fire and webbed with sheets, shawls, and veils. It felt like a bird's nest, safe and inviting save for the perilous height. Her mother swept over to the fireplace and took the lid off the hanging pot. In a few moments the air was filled with a fragrant haze. In that haze, Winri tucked herself into the folds of cloth and shadow. She liked watching her mother work and entrance the common folk, but something in her tone told her that this was different. She stowed herself away thoroughly and listened to her mother get into position, delicate shroud barely hiding her beaded braids, her back to the door, to draw them in with the mystery of her beauty.
Come in!
She heard her mother call. The door opened and a pair of booted feet drew a modest creak from the wooden floor. They both knew the sound. A man of meager mass.
Welcome.
Her mother began.
What brings you to the fold of Mistress Mori?
She could hear the lighting of a tinder splint as her mother lit the candles, setting the atmosphere.
Do you seek love, revenge, a glimpse into your future? Shall I apply my skills? Bend the unknowable morass of time and space into a clear and palpable path? Your questions are merely the key to unlocking your destiny. Of course, all things with a price. Nothing without sacrifice.
Her mother's voice caught. Winri knew this part of the routine. This was the part when she swept around and at last faced her customer. The silence that had fallen grew heavier by the second, until Mistress Mori spoke the words her daughter had never heard her speak.
What are you?
Just a man. The voice that answered was low, soft, and apparently too tired to be offended. Just a man with questions.
Uh-huh.
The mistress was unconvinced.
And your sacrifice?
A favor. That was unusual. She could hear her mother's hackles raise slightly.
A dangerous thing to offer one such as I.
I'll take my chances, miss.
I see. It is a favor you offer and a favor I keep.
The sound of clinking bottles and a puff of theatric smoke. Mori was right back into character.
Consider yourself marked. Now, your question.
There was a rustling as the man delved into some sack. After a few moments, Winri heard the thud of a book hitting the table. Her mother faltered, and for the first time in Winri's memory, the facade dropped. She could just about hear the carefully constructed character of the mistress dash upon the ground.
Where did you get this?
I found it.
Obviously.
Her mother spat. There was a tense silence, broken only by the turning of pages.
There are dark energies here. These pages drip with blood. Why would you ever keep this?
It has its uses.
Uses? You...
She was truly lost for words. This man was in deep trouble if Winri's mother was this mad.
So a warlock, then. Here, of all places.
No, I don't have any skill with magic.
None.
None.
Good.
Her mother sighed, seeming to relax a bit.
Good. Then what should I assist you with? You've already done some delving on your own, I take it.
I was looking for someone to help me with this section. Here. There was more page turning and more uneasy silence.
I see.
Mori said.
Have you been having the dream as well?
No. Should I be?
Those with the gift of foresight are rare indeed, like sterling captains of the dark and unknowable seas. However, some forces are so titanic that anyone with an eye for the ocean may observe the waves.
So you know of it? You've seen it?
There are several who have. Whispers have only recently begun reaching ears.
What does it mean?
Well, we can only hope for a metaphor, can't we? Have you heard of Umbra?
There was a sudden rattle as the man tripped over a fold in the carpet. He must have been shifting about quite a bit. Sorry. No. Her mother continued.
The infernal city, a pocket of oblivion, floating through the sky, corrupting all in its path. It nearly stamped out all of Tamriel in the early years of the Mede dynasty, and yet we barely speak of it. Prince Atribus, Lady Anaig, and the brave Sax Leal Glyn. Mundus is not nearly as sturdy as the stone we stand on. None of what we take for granted is ever as solid as we'd hope. Whiterun only exists because waters spring from a rock. A contradiction? Not unless what we take for solid is actually porous. Porous, brittle, and containing depths beyond imagination. Something stirs. Waves on the shore. Mundus is quaking. A calamity awakes.
What should I do about it? Mori barked out a laugh.
How vain of you to think you can do anything.
The mysterious guest didn't respond. As her chuckle subsided, the mystic woman cleared her throat.
However, if you are curious, you should head to the castle. Seek out Farengar's secret fire.
Winri heard the man's scowl in his voice. I came here to avoid that.
One often meets their destiny on the road they take to avoid it. Just be sure to take the book with you.
The man lingered awkwardly. Is that all you can tell me?
This conversation has already outgrown my liking. No offense.
I see. Then, this favor.
Ah, of course.
Mori picked the mistress off the floor and put her back on.
To pay back your debt, I have only one favor. A quest. And a promise to bind you like a serpent for all time.
Winri wondered briefly at what favor her mother would ask. A favor was a favor. It could be anything under the stars.
I ask that you leave this place and never darken my doorstep again.
The girl could only imagine the man was as confused as she was, as there was no movement for quite some time. Then, slowly, the book slid off the table, the door was opened, and the visitor was gone. Winri waited a little longer than she normally would to drop down onto her mother's table. Mori smiled softly at her as the wood protested.
You know one day you'll be too heavy to do that.
No way, I'll be light as the wind.
If that's true, I'll have done a very bad job.
She saw how her mother's smile didn't linger, how her brow slipped down into worry.
Mama?
She asked.
Who was that?
Nobody, dear. You can forget him.
You're shaking.
Like she was lifting the house onto her shoulders, the woman hoisted the smile back to her face.
Oh, it's just the chill. Go now, find your friends before they forget you.
Winri would go on to be the first child Sarika found, funnily enough, but she won the second game easily. It was a good day. One of the better ones, actually. And just as her mother prescribed, she didn't think about the mysterious visitor ever again. Triss Farseer and her brother Tamrin stood shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the guards in the Jarl's Grand Hall. There were almost 100 of them squeezed before the throne. Captains, sergeants, furriers, pretty much everyone except the lowly squires. Even many of the thanes, wise, honored, or merely rich, were scattered around the room.
My brothers, sisters,
Jarl Balgruuf began slow and grave.
Whiterun's finest tragedy has struck our hold. As many of you are aware, there has been an incident at the eastern border. We have lost soldiers, friends, and a damn fine captain. Even those who returned to us have come home changed. I stand before you now because I know you, and I trust you. I trust your stout hearts and level heads. I trust you to know the truth when you hear it. So hear me now. The Stormcloaks were not involved with the attack.
The guards were trained stoics, but training young, hot-blooded Nords to be stoic is like training cats to swim. Results may vary. At the Jarl's words, even the more experienced in the group were nudging their neighbors and exchanging furtive glances.
I know this may come as a shock, but in this incident, we have removed any doubt surrounding the reports out of Jorvaskr. Vampires, at least one, probably more. Vampires were behind these attacks.
Some of the guards stifled laughs, some gasps. A couple might have barely missed browning their trousers. The rustle of activity was so abrupt that the portly Imperial commander Caius stepped forth from the Jarl's side.
Attention!
He barked in military tone more typical of Imperial discipline than the war calls of Nords.
Your Jarl has said vampires, and so vampires it is. You have 5 seconds to get used to the idea.
There were a few more glances, but no one uttered another sound. The commander nodded to Balgruuf and stepped back. The Jarl continued.
I know what you all are thinking. This has to be a misunderstanding, a baseless rumor. It was just a theory at the most. We humored it too, because it was convenient to let others speculate as they searched on our behalf. But no more. The monsters from our eldest tales have come to life. They are at our door. And who knows what monsters wait beyond? For these are monstrous times in which we walk. Now, I will not call upon you to honor oaths and follow orders. I call upon you to defend your homes, your families, your hold. We shall face these fiends as we face any siege. Stand strong as our ancestors did with courage and might. Urtalos!
Unlike the commander, the Jarl spoke to the shape of the Nordic heart, and his roar was met in kind by his warriors. As their shout settled, the Jarl began to pace before them.
Measures must be taken. Jorvaskr is holding our border for us. Captain Keen of Honningbrew is sending men to relieve them. We will send men to reinforce Captain Keen. We are short of hands. Recruitment is a priority. To those who give up their sons and daughters will go honor and substantial reduction in taxes. The word must be spread. Riders to all corners of the hold. Warn, inform, gather information. We've copied a missive that contains everything we currently know about the fiends. I want this posted on every notice board in every settlement in the hold. Finally, we must call for aid. Those more experienced on these dark waters.
He raised his hand. Clutched in it was a scroll bearing his seal.
A team of you will abandon your sashes, your station, and all mention of your service to Whiterun. You will make your way north to the Pale and deliver this letter to the Hall of the Vigilance.
A collective shiver went through the throng. No one envied whoever got that job.
Eyes open, everyone. I know we are short-handed. So many troops riding away leaves this city vulnerable. But remember, Whiterun is not just a city. It is a hold. It is a people. Hold true to them. Hold true to each other. Whiterun has weathered many a storm. We shall weather this one.
Hearty shouts of approval rang out from the crowd, Nords responding the only natural way they knew to a rousing speech. A glint of satisfaction in his eye, the Jarl turned to Caius.
Commander, I leave the rest to you.
The Imperial stepped forward.
Guards, find your platoons. I need to see Summerfeet, Farseer, Candle, and Jorgensen.
Hearing their family name, both Triss and Tamrin wove through the crowd to present themselves to the commander. On the way, Triss bumped shoulders with a brown-bearded Nord sporting a prematurely shaved head.
Yewstr,
She greeted.
Triss, Tamrin,
Said Yewstr Summerfeet.
what do you make of all this?
Tamrin scratched his head.
Farcical on any other day, but here we are.
Aye, I thought the same. But my cousin was at Voltheim.
No.
is he alright?
Triss asked.
Well, he's alive. Not much beyond that at the moment.
Yewstr shuffled his feet nervously.
I reckon we drew the short straw, eh?
The pail?
Tamrin shook out his shoulders as if already feeling the chill.
Must be, right?
Triss shrugged.
Not necessarily. Maybe we're recruiting.
Yewstr waved a hand.
Wishful thinking will get us nowhere.
Neither will dreading it.
Who's dreading?
Tamrin asked.
Not me. Cold? Nothing. Beast? Nothing. Rebels?
Oh, sure. One at a time, it all sounds like a breeze.
Yewstr interrupted.
Also, we wouldn't be dodging rebels, we'd be dodging a war.
Triss elbowed the man.
Okay, enough. Otterlaus, remember?
Tamrin cleared his throat.
Well, if it's the pail, then why are you here? Aren't you still on rotation around the castle? Don't tell me you gave it up.
Are you kidding? I like my blood where it is.
Yewstr sighed mournfully.
I got replaced. The new kid from Riverwood. Gloston, I think his name is. I'm in the royal stables so they find a proper spot for me.
Triss shook her head ruefully.
And here you are, off to brave the season of crimson snow with the rest of us,
The guard rolled his eyes.
Sure. So, what's this? Did the commander call for both of you?
No, I didn't.
Cut in Caius as he waddled over.
Triss, you're not a part of this operation. Your platoon is staying in the city. Here, take this missive and post it in the square by the temple. While you're there, the squire just brought in word from Nazim. Apparently some vagabond is loitering around the garden scaring the families. Take care of that, will you?
Aye, sir.
Triss said, taking the paper in her hand. However, her eyes were fixed on the other paper the commander held, a wound scroll bearing the Jarl's seal. She looked over to her brother as he was led away like a horse. He caught her eye and tossed her what she guessed was supposed to be a reassuring smile. Carlotta Valentia's brow furrowed as she split the gold she'd been given into the appropriate amount of silver and copper. She much preferred when someone paid with exact change. Less hassle, harder to lose, however, also harder to hide. Gold was eye-catching to anyone with sticky fingers, but 1 or 2 coins had the advantage of being easily stowed down her blouse in a pinch. Once the trade was done and there were no longer customers and considerably less tomatoes, she wiped her forehead with her sleeve. It was a lonely day at the stall. Her little Mina had gone off with Lars Battleborn to play somewhere on the north side of town. Normally she wouldn't like her roaming so far afield, but she was with friends, and also Braith. No one would dare mess with that child unless they wanted a kick in the shins and a clot of mud thrown in their face. She paused to ponder whether that was something to attribute to her strong-willed mother Saphir or her warrior father Amren. Perhaps it was a combination of the two. As she sat there, chin in hand, resting her elbows on the countertop, she allowed herself a moment of reprieve. A minute wouldn't hurt. A minute to think, to let her mind and eyes wander through the busy midday market. Anarith was hawking his fresh cuts of meat, surreptitiously and efficiently beating off flies. Nog was meticulously adjusting jars of honey and the beeswax ornaments hanging from his stall. Siana was calling with the best of them, selling incense and rustic colognes. One notable absence from this corner of the market was the twinkling sound of metal trinkets. Fralia Greymane was absent, and had been for nearly a week. Her husband, Jorland, master of the Skyforge, patron steelsmith of the Companions, would periodically flex his skill in the fine arts of jewelry. On these occasions, his wife would set up in the Plains District Market, granting the peasants a taste of the refined, and for a very reasonable price at that. One rather odious fixture of the marketplace was the beggar Brenwyn. It was never quite clear whether his rampant drinking was the cause for his begging or the consequence. Either way, it was a tiresome day when he had a bottle in his hand, only outpaced in tumult by the days when he was without one. However, in this moment, she did not hear his normal slurred pleads and berations. Scanning the scene, she quickly found him, leaning against a well filled with water, his mortal enemy. He was speaking to someone, a cloaked figure. Their back was to her, and all she could make out was the dark leather boots and brown hood. The conversation seemed to be dying quickly, and Brenwyn's expression was even more absent than usual. Must have been a boring chat. Before Carlotta knew it, the cloaked figure had turned to her and was swiftly approaching. She jolted to attention, donning her merchant smile and adjusting the basket of carrots so they caught the light as best as carrots could. One would think that a hooded face would come into relief with proximity, but the figure was as much a mystery to her once it stopped before her stall as it had been speaking to Brenwyn. Then, a sweet voice slithered out of the hood.
Pardon me, good woman. I was wondering if you could help me find someone.
Oh.
Carlotta was taken aback.
It's not really my trade. The Whiterun Guard would be the first people I'd ask about it. Also, there are mercenaries all over town. At least one of them must have a penchant for this. I hear the Companions excel in tracking people down.
Oh, 'tis nothing so serious as that. There are no lives at stake.
I never said there was.
But you see, I don't need those sleepy eyes in their metal cages, nor the slothful nose of some stray dog. No, you will do fine.
Carlotta took interest in a spot of rough wood on the lip of her stall and started rubbing at it intently, as though she might sand it down with her skin alone.
Again, it's not my trade.
Surely the market sees all kinds come through.
That's true, but I'd hate to lead you astray.
You won't, I'm sure. Can I at least tell you who I'm searching for?
She sighed.
Sure, I suppose.
The hooded figure didn't bother hiding the smile in their voice.
I'm looking for a most peculiar man.
Try the bannered mare.
A man with 9 fingers.
Carlotta's idle wood-worrying paused for the barest moment. Then she blinked and continued. However, her flicker of recognition had not gone unnoticed.
You know of such a man, I see.
There's a war on. Plenty of people are missing bits and pieces.
Indeed. But only one came to mind a moment ago.
Are you going to buy anything?
She said sharply.
I could.
The cloaked figure hissed, and a hand rose into view. The pouch it held clinked in a way that Carlotta, and in truth any merchant or miser, would recognize. It was full of coin, and if her ears did not deceive her, the pitch and pith of the sound indicated gold.
If it's for sale.
At first there was shock at the hefty sum, then panic as she considered what consequences might come. Then her mind did what it always did when she saw coin. It settled on her little girl.
What do you want him for?
It's my understanding that he's a skilled fighter and trekker, and I have dearest need of one.
Carlotta's brow furrowed.
You're trying to track a tracker.
In so many words.
I don't think I can help you. The man I know is hardly a fighter, and he stays up in the mountains. Haven't seen him around here in months.
But if he was around here...
The figure extended their hand, offering the pouch.
If he was...
Carlotta paused, gathering what little she knew, and slowly reached for it.
The Temple of Kinnereth, perhaps? Or up at Yewstr with the companions.
Yewstr?
The figure's lips curled with interest.
An unsavory lot, I hear.
Carlotta shrugged.
Oh, maybe they're a bit spirited, but unsavory? No.
You don't suppose they're dangerous?
I wouldn't say so.
Ah.
The shade flickered.
Don't worry. You will.
Suddenly, Carlotta was alone at her stall again. She couldn't remember why that felt odd. Perhaps it was simply that her daughter Mila was off with friends. That must be it. She looked down at her hand. It was extended, hovering in the air as if she were about to grasp something. She cocked her head and picked up the apple directly under her floating hand. She turned it this way and that, looking for a bruise or rot or bug sign. There must have been some reason she'd been reaching for it. As she turned it, though, it was immaculate, just as she'd expect of one of her discerning selection. But still, what was this feeling? Why had she been reaching? After a moment's confusion, she made eye contact with the Redgaurd woman across the way. Feelings could wait. Business could not. She cleared her throat and called out to her, and then the next customer, and the next, as she fell back into the rhythm of her day in the market. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Skyrim audio adventure. We've come to the end of the year, and I was really hoping to get 6 episodes out this year, but I've only managed to match last year's mark of 5. However, I still breathe, so I'm going to try again. Let's get into the voice cast real quick. Kyea was played by my wife in her first foray into voice acting and onto this project. Both Farkus and Vilkus were voiced by Jorden Bates. Andurs was voiced by John Lang. Arcadia was voiced by Holly Lindin. Winri was voiced by Katabelle Ansari. Mistress Mori was voiced by Brenda Schmid. You might remember her as the Pale Lady from Season 1. Coleman is back as Jarl Balgruuf the Greater. Erik Hansen played Commander Caius. Kelsey Painter returns after a long absence to the role of Triss. Verhage played Tamrin. Leo J. played Yewstr. My sister played Carlotta, and the shadowy figure at the end was played by Bastian Boda, who you might remember as Sildin. This episode is dedicated to the memory of my grandfather Art. I would not be the man I am without him. I will now observe a moment of silence, and you are welcome to join me. I hope that you all have good holidays, a good new year. I hope that you are surrounded by loved ones. I hope that you are comfortable. I hope that you are warm when it's cold. I hope that you are cool when it's hot. I hope you have good food, good music, and better people around you. And once again, thanks for listening.